Good evening and welcome to the Top 25 Rundown presented by the Sportscast. Today is March 29, 2023. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all your channels YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.tv, and Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It'll help us out tremendously. You can listen to us on your smart speaker play Sportscast. Visit us on the sportscast.net. Also follow us on Twitter, the Sportscast1, and check out our app, the Sportscast, in the iOS App Store. Hello, my name is Alan West. Welcome to the Top 25 Final Four Edition show. Tonight we're joined by Erwin Dudley, former player at the University of Alabama, 2002 SEC Player of the Year, 2019 SEC Legend. Also played 13 years overseas. How are we doing, Erwin?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Living the dream, and thankful that we got you. And also we have Hewitt-Trussville High School men's basketball coach Jeremy Monceaux, former college assistant, as well as former college basketball player and holder of the highest scoring average in Alabama high school history. How we doing, Coach?
I'm doing good. I just enjoy being the least important person in the room to give you my expertise on something I'm not an expert on, but we're ready to roll.
That's funny. That's funny. I mean, if anyone could say that, sorry, you forget. That's my line. I appreciate you saying that, but hey, you know what? So when I was looking at the information before tonight, I was checking out the NIT, the men's Final Four, and the women's Final Four. Were you guys able to check out the two NIT games last night?
I did. I caught some of them. I watched some of the UAB Utah Valley. It was a good game. Of course, I'm rooting for the home state team. In one of my one of the assistant coaches that coached me in Alabama, he's on the staff there too. So I'm pulling for him two times. But UAB man. I mean, they played well. I mean, Utah Valley they fought to the end. I mean, they went into overtime, but UAB prevailed. I think it's definitely going to be a good game tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. It'll be a good game tomorrow as well.
Jeremy, before I have you give your input, one thing that I looked at for the Conference USA for the tournaments and the two tournaments that we've been talking about, fellas.
Mhm.
You realize that Conference USA is 17-1?
Oh, really?
17-1 right now is the record for
Yeah.
Wow.
for that conference and the two tourneys.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, well, first of all, just to, comment on that. I mean, like we like to say in basketball all the time, like, man, there's a lot of conferences that have, big boy basketball getting played, and sometimes
Mhm.
people that don't, your casual fans don't really appreciate it, but you're not playing any of those teams in that league without strapping up and being ready to go.
Yep.
So they've got good players. A lot of times, most of their transfers are coming in from ACC, SEC level dudes, and with the portal and everything, a lot of times those teams are usually older than maybe some of those other teams. So I'm not shocked to see it. I mean, obviously that's unheard of, but not shocked to see it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So, well, I think I know who both of you are going to pick, but who are you thinking for the NIT right now?
Blazers. Go Blazers.
That's right.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to pick North Texas just because while I do like how the Blazers are playing, North Texas held Wisconsin the final 9.5 minutes without any points because Wisconsin looked like they were going to be able to win that game, but then 9.5 minutes, you don't score any points.
Hey, some of it was defense, and then some of it they just missed shots. I mean,
True.
yeah, it was a struggle for them. I mean, I watched them like I don't think I've ever seen a game go like that, where they missed that many shots, and for them to lose, it was unbelievable to go that long of a stretch. They needed Jeremy out there, He would have got some. He would have put it in the basket. I guarantee you that.
I don't know about that. I do think that for a college team with the level of players that they have to not score for 9.5 minutes, like I would want somebody to maybe go check the rim, see if something covered the basket. I
Too
mean,
much air in the
'cause
ball.
yeah, too much, which has been a conversation through the coaches and players in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I just thought that was crazy. I mean, I was kind of casually watching the game. We're on spring break this week, so we were kind of just chilling. And I mean, I was really kind of blown away by it. But there's rumors on the street that like I said before, that the North Texas coach is already committed to go coach at Texas Tech, and that his last game will be his last game. So maybe there's some extra oomph there. But Philip Pearson, obviously I didn't play at Alabama, wasn't that big time, but he's a guy that's really helped me in my career. He made a bunch of calls for me when I was getting into my trying to coach college there for those first 9 or 10 years. And I that dude deserves a head coaching job, number one. But number two is
100%.
I would love to see those guys just have some success, man. He's one of the good ones that remains good. And then Andy Kennedy's just a G. I know you don't know nothing about him, Allen, down here, but he's a gangster around these parts, bro. Like he just gets dudes, and he had it rolling at Ole Miss, really. He's the most successful guy that they've ever had. So I mean, obviously we're going with our Bama Blazers, man. You got too many Alabama boys on the call tonight.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I don't mind being outnumbered. That's never a problem. See, it's not the amount of people. It's not being outnumbered. It's not the fighting the dog, guys. You already know that. I'm not worried about that for you guys, but I can appreciate and respect you guys like in UAB. And I mean, if they win, I won't be sad. But I mean, just watching North Texas and then how they beat
dude.
Wisconsin, and Wisconsin played Liberty and only won by 4 points. So I mean, that's why I gotta play
UAB
the
was
devil's advocate.
Florida Atlantic's only has 3 losses on the season, and UAB here in Birmingham was actually one of those L's. So there's going to be grown men on that floor. It should be a great bet. I mean, no secrets. I mean, they're conference foes. Like, there's going to be no secrets. It's just going to be mano a mano, grown men getting after it. So it's going to be a great game for an NIT final.
Yeah. Who wants it the most? That's what it comes down to. You played against each other during the regular season. You already know your opponent for the most part, especially playing against them during the regular season. And so it's just going to be about who wants it more, who execute the best, and who takes care of the ball.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, it's going to be probably one of the best games because, I mean, I watched the NIT last year final with Xavier winning, which was a good game. But I think, like you guys said, with the conference foes in the championship game, I mean, even though we don't have, like, say, the Blue Bloods or some of how people would go for, like, the higher conference playing head-to-head in the final, I think this is going to be a great final, honestly. It's probably going to be one of the most contested finals we've seen in the past few years. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely, like you said, one of the tournaments where you don't have all the blue bloods in there. Well, I take that back. You still have UConn in there. You still have UConn
True.
there. So
True, but we're talking about the NIT. We're not talking about the NCAA tournament. That's what it is for the NIT.
I'm sorry. Carolina turned it down.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, I know that they won't regret that, but that's definitely something I have thought about.
They should regret it.
Why? Why would
Don't get me on my soapbox, Allen. Don't get me going. I mean, because it's just. I mean, look, as a washed up former athlete, I mean, I think about the price, the amount I would pay to lace it up one more time with guys, my brothers in that locker room. And when you turn down a chance to go play, like, that's just a chance you are never getting back, man. Like, I coach, I'm obviously still can be in the game. I'm lucky enough to coach at a high level here in high school, and I love every minute of it. But bottom line is I don't take any shots anymore that count anyway. So, like I wish they would have played in it. But regardless, I think we just still had the same Final Four or, Final Four with NIT, the same championship game with NIT. And I'm looking forward to it. What up, Bob?
What, Jeremy,
it's so funny. I know who y'all are talking about, and I just came in 2 minutes ago.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of late editions, we have Bob Alvis, high school sports commentator, public address announcer, host of Sports Buffet, and multiple other jobs and activities. Bob, I know that hearing about North Carolina, it always makes you very happy. But I mean, we were just trying to talk and make our NIT picks right now because right now we have the two Bama boys, which surprise, surprise, they picked UAB, whereas I'm going to pick North Texas. What are you gonna? Let's have you be the tiebreaker, sir. Who are you gonna pick?
Just to keep the peace, I'm going to go with UAB.
Okay.
All right, so I'm at number 3-1. You know what? That is okay. That is okay.
It seems like if you get to the NIT Final Four, not only might your team do well next year, but you're going to get another coaching job as well.
Hey, well, Jeremy, I want to add something to what you said a second ago about being able to lace them up and play. I think when I was at Alabama, we ended up doing the NIT my sophomore year. I think we got snubbed. It felt like we got snubbed from the NCAA tournament my sophomore year. And we did play in the NIT. We lost in the finals. But I think that
was that Wichita that year?
No, it was Tulsa.
Tulsa, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So they beat us in the final. But I think those extra games, playing with my teammates, like we gained more camaraderie on the court and off the court. And we came back my junior year, had a great year. Won the SEC regular season title. We lost in the championship game of the SEC tournament. We made it to the NCAA tournament. And so I just think that, again, like you said, if you have opportunity to play with your brothers and play guys and play more games, I think that's an added plus.
I definitely agree with that just because, Jeremy, when you played at Liberty, the one thing that I'll never forget was your freshman year at the Big South tournament. It was a rivalry game at home against Bradford. Unfortunately, you guys lost that game, which that was a tough game. Huh?
So thanks for bringing up that moment. I can remember the last play in my head right now.
See, I remember the reason why I remember that is I was one of the people that got in trouble for the Hey song. I don't know if you remember that controversy. We'll leave that one alone for right now, but I had gotten in trouble for that. It was still worth it, but the thing that I remember is you guys, unfortunately, that year you didn't get to do any postseason tournament or anything. So that was literally the end of the year, which it sucked that it ended like that, but it was something that I appreciated being there to watch just because how they were having us, like how we would have to pay for the tickets for the game. Like I think they were able to knock prices down, but still, that game, everyone was there. That was one of the biggest games of the year.
No doubt. Well, I mean, I do think like what makes NIT cool today, which they did not have, 5 million years ago when I was still playing, like, you have those lower conferences that if you win that regular season championship, but you don't win your conference tournament, you get into that NIT, which is really special. I mean, Sanford University down here, was really fighting hard, to do that. Because when you get in those one and done situations in that conference tournament and you're playing for a one-bid league, like, there's teams that have really great coaches, really great players, and go really great seasons, and it comes down to one game. I mean, one game. Yep. So, but I also think that's why I include like those teams like, North Carolina and some of those teams like, getting that NIT is like this travesty of an event. But for some of those schools, like UAB or some of these lower level schools, like, the team that lost in the semifinal or the team that lost to UAB in the semifinals. They wouldn't be there unless they won their league. So it's a reward for them, even though for others it seems not as much of a big deal. So but I love it. I'm rooting for the Blazers and my boys. So
No, I'm definitely looking forward to that game. Erwin, I know we're a little bit short on time for you, so real quick, for the women's basketball, for the Final Four for the women, have you looked at the Final Four for them so far?
Gamecocks.
Okay, I'm picking the Gamecocks to win as well.
Gamecocks.
I'll go out
I
on a limb
checked my
there.
bracket. I still have my Final Four, and I picked the Elite Eight, so I'm doing okay for the moment. But the
Hey,
thing for the
the
Gamecocks,
women's bracket though, it's balanced though. It got 2 number 1 seeds for 2 and a 3 seed.
Mhm.
It's not like the men.
True,
They're
but the
all over
thing
the
is,
place
for the
now.
women, I think
Yeah.
South Carolina's going to have their hands full against Iowa because Caitlin Clark, how she's been stepping up in the tournament, and how her last game she had a 40-point triple double. Even
Yeah.
Magic, he never did that his whole career. He made sure to call her out for that, and apparently, I guess today she won a Naismith Player of the Year for the women, which
Yeah,
is
she's
definitely deserved.
Yeah, she can
I
play, but
think
South Carolina's a different beast though.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree, and I mean, I think South Carolina's going to win, but I think that she's going to give them one of the biggest
She gonna
runs for their money they've had this year. It's going to be like how Ole Miss was for them. I think it's going to be that type of a game.
Yeah, Maryland actually played them tough as well. There's a Maryland. They played them tough as
Mhm.
well the other night. I watched it. They played them tough. I watched them during the regular season when they played and they blew Maryland out. But Maryland came in there, they hung with them this game. So um, again, when you play against teams multiple times, it's hard. The more you play against a team, it gets harder and harder to beat them because they don't like losing to you. You beat them one time, you beat them twice. That third time is like one of the hardest time to beat a team. After you play them, it really is. I don't know why, but I don't know if the team that wins they relax some, and the team that loses they have a little bit more emotion. They want to win more. I don't know, but it's just something about that.
The problem for the Maryland game, though, is Maryland had the lead in the first quarter, but the second quarter changed the game because then South Carolina was able to get a rhythm and they went into halftime with a 10-point lead. And after that, as much as you wanted Maryland to come back, if South Carolina has a 10-point lead, unless you do really well, you're not going
Yeah,
to catch them. And unfortunately, you're not going to win. And I mean, they had Diamond Phillips in this game, and she wasn't in the first game. So you could tell the difference. But unfortunately, even with how they came back, it just wasn't going to be enough against South Carolina because you have to try to
no.
stay close to them. And once they had that 10-point deficit at halftime, I hate to say it, but I knew it was over then. What do you think, Bob?
I will take South Carolina by at least 14. And I like Caitlin Clark. I think she's probably the best player left on any level. But give me the Gamecocks, big time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's jump over to the men for a second. I decided to go back and look at my bracket, and apparently, according to ESPN, I imploded at the Sweet 16, and since then I can get no more points. So I only got 400 points for this tourney. So there's always next year. Right now,
Yeah.
from what I'm seeing, UConn's going to be the team to beat.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. They've been really playing the most dominant on both ends of the court. But again, Miami's been playing well. They've been playing well also. So you can never count them out. But I just think that um, from top to bottom, I think UConn has more than any of the other 14, well, other 3 teams are left.
I think San Diego State's won like their last 13. I know the competition level's not that grand, but when you win 13, I think it's their last 13, something like that.
Mhm.
I mean, the only team I would say probably has the least chance, and they'll probably win the whole thing because I'm saying this, is Florida Atlantic. Because I think when you're that low seed and you have that time off, I think your momentum kind of gets a little bit killed. So they're going to have to restart.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's
Good
true.
point.
I mean, for UConn, the only reason why I'm saying that UConn's been the most dominant in every game they've played in the NCAA tournament so far, they've won by at least 15 points.
Yeah.
At least 15 points. And I mean, when you watch the Gonzaga game, how in the second half they missed 22 shots in the second half, which is why they in the end lost by almost 30. It was I felt bad for Drew Timmy for him going out that way for Gonzaga just because of how he had been playing for them and how he was, I guess, the face of Gonzaga basketball the last 2 or 3 years. But when the team just wasn't producing, what did you expect?
I'll tell you, I think the best decision made in the tournament so far was Texas, because if you had hired anybody but Rodney Terry, I think that would have been a major mistake. And I don't say Rodney Terry's going to be there in 6 or 7 years, but I think for now, don't go out and do a coaching hire and spend a lot of money to make a mistake.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jeremy? You've been a little quiet over there, sir.
Well, I'm just listening to, guys that looked into it. Yeah, I mean, the men's Final Four, first of all, I thought it was really interesting. You talk about the difference in the women's game and the men's game. Like, the women's teams like South Carolina, LSU, your better women's teams, like, once they get up on you, like the games are over. Like you can't, so for Iowa to have a chance or whoever to have a chance, they've got to get in front and stay in front. If they play from behind, they're just not going to win those games. But we're on the men's side. Like one thing that was crazy in the Elite Eight is, you had like FAU, Florida Atlantic was behind, had a big comeback. Miami
Mhm.
was behind, had a big comeback. Like it almost was like those teams that played. I mean, Texas couldn't miss in that game. And it's almost like those teams, in that Elite Eight game, the coaches talk about who have gotten there so far that sometimes the Elite Eight game is so hard to get your guys to lock in on because that Final Four is like a layup away, right? You're like,
Mhm.
and that's every
Yeah.
kid's dream. Loves college basketball. Like, man, get to that Final Four. And I think sometimes when you make a ton of shots and you play well early, when it gets late, that butt gets a little tight. Those shots that were going in early almost become fool's gold because you still take them, but you're missing them because the
Mhm.
game's on the line. It allows those teams that are playing desperate because they've been down the whole time and a little
Yeah.
loose because they're trying to come back to just steal that momentum, which I think we saw a ton of. Which it was really awesome. But UConn, I think UConn, first of all, they were a lot of people's pick to win the whole thing there for a while during the season. I mean, beat Alabama, early and, but the grind of the conference season, as Erwin knows a lot
Mhm.
about at that level, man, like he spoke earlier about like they took a couple L's, but I think what it helped them do, they fought some injuries. Now they're very deep as well, and they can play
They are.
fast. They can, I mean, they come off the bench with dudes that can play, and they can play fast, or they can get down into a half court game and grind you out. They're physically, you can't really beat them up. I don't want to talk about my Crimson Tide too much, but San Diego State was just a more physical team, and the 4 or 5
Yeah.
games that we lost this year, UConn being one of them, were when teams just out physicaled us or Alabama. However, I'm a fan, I just like UConn's obviously the betting favorite by a lot. But I mean, you just never know, man. You could make an argument that game with Miami is, I mean, Miami's got dudes, and they got
They
dudes
do.
that like, they got the kind of dudes that are like, hey, if we were playing playground basketball, that you're taking their dudes, like no plays, couple of ball screens, go get you one. And they've got 3 or 4 of them that can really go. So I think that game's going to be big time. But, it's hard not to pick UConn, but quietly, I kind of want Larinaga to get him one, like dude's got some, drip for an old guy, been won everywhere he's been. So I'd like to see him get one.
Been
And
around the
then,
block.
but I do expect San Diego State to get the championship. I think that's crazy. Obviously, I had my Bama boys there. But at the end of the day, I think they're proof that defense can still win a championship, because I'm not sure they have a whole lot of offensive firepower, but when they decide to put their hands on you and clamp down a little bit, they're hard to score on. Because I thought, they've played some teams and beat some teams that had a whole lot of firepower and made it look pretty easy, pretty tough to get a shot off, So I expect San Diego State and UConn to be in the championship, but I'm hoping Miami gets there.
Yeah, I can understand that. And Erwin, I know you have to head out in a second, but since Jeremy just talked about it, how did you feel about Alabama for the tournament this year, sir? I want to let you have the floor for that. I know it's tough. I understand. I do know it's tough, but
No, I mean, honestly, like, we play a style of basketball. We take a lot of, three-pointers. Jeremy would definitely love, he would have loved playing in that system. They take a lot of three-pointers, and when you get into the NCAA tournament, man, it's different type of basketball. You get referees and stuff that have never ref you during the season, probably, so you're not used to them. You're going to different venues, and it's just a totally different brand of basketball. And when they say it's a new season, it's a conference championship, a conference tournament, then the NCAA. That's like 3 seasons, including the regular season. There's like 3 seasons that you have to go through as a team, and it only takes one team to get hot to catch a rhythm in the tournament, and then it's over. You're done. It's like I said, Alabama played against San Diego State. Never played against San Diego State, and it's a team that if you hear a lot of people talk, I've talked to a lot of people about them. They was like, oh, we got a cakewalk to the Final Four. I mean, a number of people said it, and I'm like, no, I've said no. They actually got a good team. They actually, oh, we got a cakewalk. I said, okay. And then you got to look at you look at the rosters. They have a bunch of seniors, 4th and 5th year seniors. I mean, a lot of experience, a lot of experience. And then, like you said, the conference they play in, I mean, it's a grind conference. They play defense. They put in, like Jeremy just said a second ago. When we play against teams that are physical and, like I said, put their hands on you, and the referees let them play, we tend to struggle with teams like that. And so, and we ran up on the wrong team. Now, if we had played against, say, for example, FAU or somebody like that, we might have would have beat them. I mean, FAU, yeah, they can score. They play defense, but I don't think they play as good as defense as San Diego State does, or any other teams, because we could score the ball. But those guys right there, and then Brandon Miller, he didn't have his best game as well. Probably one of his worst games he's had all year. So, and it led to us a bad L to end the season. But you can't take away what they accomplished during the whole entire season, because they did a lot of great things. A lot of great things.
And I think, Alan, I know everyone's got to go, but I think it's a travesty Alabama fans can be the worst at this, like, because they're so football minded, and then they just cheer for basketball when it feels good. Like, I've been an Alabama basketball fan. I went to Erwin's games, and I was way back in the day. So, like, but I think it's a travesty. Like, there's no such thing as as an easy game in basketball. Like, you can ask UConn, like, in the coaching staff and the players, like, they won games by 14, 15 to 20 points, and your casual know-nothing fan thinks, like, oh, that is a grind. That is a possession by possession in the 3-point line. changes the game. Like, you're never out of it. I mean, I was just watching the replay of Duke and Maryland the other day when Duke was down by like 13 with 47 seconds left on the clock and ended up winning in regulation. I mean, the 3-point line makes the game never over. And so you get in the NCAA tournament where you have really good, desperate teams. There's no such thing as an easy road. I mean, there's just, it's a grind, man. And I didn't even, like I said, I mean, we played one year, St. Joe's beat us by 100, but I would like to think that, we played our butts off and we played as hard as we could. There's no such thing as an easy road in the tournament. That's why we are where we are with a 9 seed and a 5 seed and because you're one bad night away from going home. But that's why it's the greatest tournament and, to me, the greatest sport in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna argue with you about that. One thing that I was looking at ESPN and I saw 3 UConn players since the Sweet 16. They have been following Ramadan while playing in the tournament. Now, I don't know if you know what that means per se, but what that means is from dusk
I know what it is, yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yes.
just in case someone else doesn't, from dusk till dusk, you don't eat, you don't drink, you fast the whole time.
The whole time, yeah.
And so, I mean, for 3 of those players to be able to hang in there and show up as much as that they have. I mean, I know that technically you could. I've seen people that like they could suck on ice cubes during that, but just following that and still being able to be as contribute in their games for UConn, I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm a professional eater, so Bob will have to comment on that. I'm not going.
My physique says I don't fast. Dust to dust.
No doubt.
Well, my physique said the same thing, and I mean, I'm not ashamed of that, but
not fast, but it's never been that long. I fast from certain stuff, but they're right there. Like I said, that's impressive. I had a teammate that did it as well, and teammate did it actually as well. So I'm very familiar with it. I mean, it's tough to to do that, but I mean, it's definitely a commitment.
and so I mean, I'm not saying that it's not important, but it's just something that for them to do that and just it's two of the 3 players that are following that have been key contributors, and just watching how they've been able to balance that out. I mean, I just honestly, it blows me away.
Yeah, I mean, it probably takes some very intentional planning on their part to be able to do that, which is awesome, and then still be able to get your body and mind prepared to play. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Erwin, I do know you have to leave. I do thank you for your time, sir, and we'll definitely have to get you back on again. And any last words before you head out, sir?
No, that's it, man. I appreciate you guys. Well, I enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely get you on again. And sorry about the Tide, but we're gonna see what happens next year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for next year. Don't worry. All right.
Yeah,
you can hold me to that.
The roster and the coaching staff shaking up. We got 2 systems left, and so we're one player's left, and some of them graduating. So we'll see. It's gonna be there's a lot of shaking up going.
In there, dog. Get that resume in there.
I know, right?
All righty.
I appreciate you guys, though.
See you, Erwin.
All right, take care.
Take care.
So Monceaux might not be coaching high school basketball in Alabama much longer. He might have to get his resume dusted off.
Man, come on. I tell you what, man, for you guys, I don't want to kiss his butt too much when he was on air, but Erwin is an absolute. I mean, man, he was a stud when he played. He's still a stud now. I got season tickets to Alabama games, and his are quite a bit lower than mine. So he's I was gonna make a joke about that when he was on there, and I got good seats now, bro. Like your boy ain't sitting, in the cheap seats, but I ain't sitting anywhere close to where he's sitting. So he's still a legend down here, man, and he had an amazing career, and he's a good dude, man. He knows what he's talking about.
So I got a quick question for both you guys. What do you think of the end of the San Diego State Creighton game?
Yeah. Oh man, Alan, you want to take that, or you want me to roll?
I'm gonna let you roll with it this time. I'm gonna let you roll
Yeah.
first, just because I want to see your point of view.
I loved the banter on the show after the game with Barkley and Jay Wright and all those guys, because Jay Wright obviously is a former coach, a national championship coach, and the one thing I was frustrated, and that's why I brought him up, because I'm basically saying what he said. But I watched San Diego State play Alabama and then Creighton, and they're a very physical, tough basketball team, and in each of those games were very physical, tough games. Like there were a lot of, contact, a lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of grabbing, a lot of holding. And then all of a sudden that's called at the end of the game. Like, now, based on the written definition of a foul, probably was one, but in that game, in the 10 minutes before, that was never going to be called. And I just hate that that's how a game ended. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be one thing if, the dude would have just smacked his arm or something that was very noticeable, and then people on TV, they got to tell you, they got to say what they're supposed to say. So they used all these big words like dislodged and moved. Like, bottom line is that wasn't a foul, complete joke. I hope that official didn't go to the Final Four. And, they let each other beat each other up for, 39 minutes and 45 seconds. So I thought it was weak. It was a terrible way to end the game. It killed the mojo. And that's how I felt about it.
Wow, I don't know how you really feel, but I'll take that answer.
No, I gotta agree with Jeremy, because that was a game where they left it all on the court, and it felt almost like you were violated a little bit, because you wanted it to have the ending as good as how the whole game was, and then to see how they just went, okay, well, you know what, we're going to make it to where one team is going to win, and we're not going to worry about going into overtime. So they did that, and then just the controversy that followed after that when they were trying to get the inbound pass in, I felt like it tainted the game.
Yeah.
That's literally how it felt to me. I could be wrong, but that was because I was listening to it on the radio, because I was out and about doing a few things, but I listened to the whole game. And so when I was listening to the ending, I was just like, wow, for as great of a game as it was, to have it end like that, it didn't
And I
feel
really,
like it was how it should have been.
yeah, and I wasn't as mad about the clock thing as I was about the foul. Like, you know what I mean? Like the clock thing,
Mhm.
I guess the whole thing was stupid. Bob, I don't know how you felt about this, that they pulled a stopwatch out supposedly and did a stopwatch. Like, what are we doing? Like that seems dumb to me. Like the clock thing, even if they'd have got it back with 0.1, like, they're still at a disadvantage. That really didn't bother me as much as the foul call did. Just to be honest.
See, I'm more mad about the clock thing than I am the foul
Really?
call. Yep. Because from the letter of the law, it's a foul.
Yeah.
It's a foul from the letter of the law. I get where you're all coming from about, you didn't call it for the first 39, 50, and you're going to call it in the last 10 seconds. I get that. First off, I don't think we ever knew whose ball it was at the end anyway, because I don't really think they signaled. They just went to the clock, or they went to the replay, which I like replay, but my gosh, it takes a long time. A long time.
Ridiculous.
Long time. Too long. I think there was.
When you were listening on the radio, though, they did say that when Creighton had thrown the ball in, they said that the ball had gone off a Creighton player. So it was going to be San Diego State ball. And that was why Greg McDermott was trying to lobby the officials.
But there was no signal, I don't think, on the floor that it was anybody's
No, it
ball at the
wasn't.
end. So we
They
don't.
might
I
have
mean,
said that on the radio broadcast, but not on the live broadcast.
it's like
Okay.
one of the mysteries of the world. Like, who had the ball at the end? We'll never know. I mean, I think there would have probably been like 0.4. Not that I'm the grand poobah of clock management, but I mean, the ball hit out of bounds. Somebody should have had a shot left. You know, that's what it. To me, it took forever. And San Diego State was drawing up a play, and then they see the official go waving the hands, and I think they were like surprised and elated all at the same
they
time.
just won. Yeah.
So, but it's a foul. That's my thing. But I get where you're coming from. I mean, you know, from the coaching
Well,
perspective,
just to end the game
I
like
agree.
that in general, you get a questionable foul call, then the whole clock episode, like it almost looked like they, it's just a terrible way to end the game. I mean,
I would
of that
rather
big-
eliminate flopping than that call, because flopping, you're having to get into the intent of what was the person's mind. To me, the guy was pushed. Now, whether he acted or whatever is a different story. Dude was pushed.
on the shot you're talking about.
Yes, may have been a
He
slight
was.
push, but
You're right. He was.
But
He was.
go ahead, Alan. Sorry to hijack.
That's okay. I mean, I was waiting for somebody to bring that up because I knew it was coming, and so that's why when you mentioned it about it's okay. I don't need to mention it. I know someone else is going to mention it. Now, the one thing, Jeremy, you being a coach, when Kansas State lost to FAU, and you saw the Kansas State coach go in there and commend the Florida Atlantic players, I thought that was pretty cool and pretty classy.
Yeah, well, Jerome Tang is, one of my favorite coaches probably out there right now. In fact, Alan, when we were bouncing around between coaches, between Richie McKay and some of the guys that got those jobs, I thought that Jerome would have been a great fit at Liberty way back in the day. He's real tight with Stephon Leary, who was one of our assistant coaches when I played there. So I think Jerome's a stud. I think it was awesome for him to go in there. I mean, social media is such a great thing these days because it gives a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about an opinion on things. So there were people like, should he have done that? Should he not have done that? I'm sure the coach gave him permission. I think it was a great thing. Why not? I mean, listen, Florida Atlantic's made an incredible run. They have a great team, but at the end of the day, they are a mid-major conference. I mean, it's a mid-major team that he just was very highly impressed by. And so I was impressed by it. I think it says a lot about him. And I just wonder if Kansas State will be able to hold on to him for the long haul because I think he's a stud.
Definitely, I can agree with that. One thing that I did look at, Miami, one of their players who they were able to get for this year was the transfer from Kansas State. And so he's been one of the stars over at Miami. So Bob, you and me have talked about Coach Hill this whole year off and on about how the magic he had George Mason, and now it's almost like lightning struck twice because now he's able to do it in Miami 16 years after he led George Mason to the Final Four. And for me, because I'm still up in Northern Virginia, I live near George Mason. I remember when that happened before.
Yeah.
So seeing how Coach Larinaga is able to do it again, I'm happy for him. I want to see how they go against UConn, but I would not be sad if my pick was wrong for UConn, just because I think that how Larinaga is as a coach, just how he motivates his players. I think it's going between UConn and Miami. I think that it's going to be the game of the tournament for the Final Four, just because my opinion is I think that even though the championship game is going to be a game, I think that that game is going to be basically the championship game. It's kind of like how in 2014 for college football for Ohio State and Alabama, how Ohio State did beat Alabama. and then they had to play Florida for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
But them beating Alabama, that was basically the championship. Just playing Oregon was just kind of like the consolation game since they already did the hard game. How do you guys feel?
I think y'all are all going to have egg on your face when San Diego State is hoisting that trophy on Monday night.
Ooh,
Hey, that's
that would
okay.
be awesome.
I mean, yeah, I think the upper echelon of coaches since I'll say 2000, and even though I mean Coach K had a lot of his success in the 80s and 90s, he still had a great bit in 2000. I think you've got Coach K, you've got the Izzos. Gosh, I don't want to leave anybody out. You got Calipari. I mean, you got probably a top 10. Jim Larrañaga, I don't think is mentioned in that top 10, and he's definitely, in my opinion, probably belonging in that discussion. And I don't think enough people. I don't know why. I mean, maybe he hadn't been in a blue blood. Maybe I don't know. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I mean, he took George Mason there for goodness sakes. I mean, what else do you want to say? And he took Miami. When, let's face it, Miami is never going to be looked at as an ACC team by most people because everybody's going to say, if you're not in North Carolina, you don't represent the ACC in a way. And I hate to be like that because that's knocking Virginia and everybody else. But, Duke, UNC, NC State, Wake Forest. I mean, I think that's where people look at that's an ACC team, not Miami. And Miami is. And they're the lone wolf representing the conference on the men's side.
Yeah, I mean, I think basketball is such a crazy sport because coaches when in order to be a coaching legend, you do kind of have to be at a blue blood school and you have to have success in the tournament. But there's a lot of really, really freaking good coaches that have had really good programs for a long time and just, never won big in the tournament. And for him to do that at George Mason, which, they had the Final Four run, but they weren't just good that one year. Like they were always good. They just had that special team that kind of made a run. But look, let's be honest, guys. It is to win at Miami in basketball. I mean, people don't even go to the Miami Heat games. You know what I mean? And they had LeBron and all those guys. And I remember them making jokes that the crowd wouldn't arrive until halftime when they had the big three or whatever they call that crap. For him to do this at Miami, I think is just, I think it's incredible. I really do. And I think good coaches just win wherever they go. And I think he's one of those guys. And I think about it all the time though. He's at George Mason, he's grinding all those years. He got a really good payday to go to Miami, and he's probably living the life. If you're going to retire somewhere and get the basketball program going, I don't know if there's anywhere better than Miami. But I tell you what, he's 2 games away, which I don't know it'll happen, but he's 2 wins away for me, being mentioned in that, in that conversation with I guess what we would consider some of the game's best.
Who would you most compare Larrañaga to in coaching circles?
Gosh.
Alan, you can fire away at this one too. I want to hear both sides.
I'm trying to
Maybe
Bob,
a Thad Matta.
Thad Matta?
Kind of like Thad Matta.
Are we talking about his style? Or are we talking about just his overall?
Not the style, more probably like the pedigree and the results. The name that popped out to me was Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Because I don't think Brad Stevens gets enough love to be totally honest with you, like he should.
Well, part of it though was after his success at Butler, jumping right to the NBA,
Right.
and then going from being a coach to jumping into the front office. Because if he was still a coach, he probably would have been able to get more recognition. But with him jumping into the office and focusing more on personnel matters, he decided to go behind the scenes more now, which I appreciate it, but just seeing how that was.
The other one,
go
ahead.
He wasn't a coach for as long too, though, is the other thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Brad Stevens is a really good as far as like, because I do think that Larinaga is very like relaxed. He's not a big yeller and screamer, which, Brad used to always talk about how, he used to talk about how he wasn't a big yeller and screamer, wasn't a big angry guy. I mean, Brad just was so young when he became a superstar. There was a few years ago where I kind of felt like, Greg Popovich and Brad Stevens were the best basketball minds on the planet, when they were both coaching. That was kind of my opinion. I don't know if Jim was ever put in that category, but I think what he did, one thing we always wonder as high school coaches sometimes is like, the guy that was at Belmont, Rick Byrd, for 1,000 years. And then you had the guy who was at, where'd Steph Curry go? Davidson. Like
Bob McKillop.
Yeah, Bob McKillop, like these low major guys that won 17 million basketball games, but never, they just, and I think this is good, but they were just comfortable in their own skin. They loved where they were at. Those coaches had opportunities to go take a Miami and go take some of these schools and never took those jobs because they were very comfortable where they were at. They won where they were at. They all kind of had significant runs in the tournament. Jim Larinaga was the one that was like, you know what, I could do this at George Mason and probably croak over. They're never gonna, but let me go see if I can get it done with the big boys,
right?
And so that's what makes him just a step above to me. Because like I said, I think Rick Byrd is an amazing basketball coach. McKillop, like obviously, like I mean, he's a mastermind at basketball, but none of those guys ever said, you know what, I'm going to go take a really hard job in a high major league and see if I can get it going like Jim Larinaga did. And I'm sure that, that $3-4 million contract probably helped him to get down to Miami, but man, it's been worth every penny probably if you're there, AD.
Yeah, Larinaga hasn't failed, because I would think about Sean Miller in that category, but Sean Miller's tenure at Arizona, I think, kind of is like, I don't want to say the red X, but it's the mark on the record.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, the only one I thought of another example, Bob. What about Shaka Smart? How he's been able, other than how he didn't really succeed at Texas per se, but VCU, Marquette.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shaka, again, I think that's the black mark on the record is when you went to Texas, and I don't want to say you failed, but if you get fired, unfortunately, somebody else has determined failure. And what you guys were talking about earlier, I think the tournament is the most overrated aspect of determining whether somebody is a good team or a good player. It's about getting hot at the right time.
Yep.
I love the tournament to death. Love it. I mean, I wouldn't say abolish the tournament at all, but I mean, it's like you guys were talking about with Alabama. The tournament should not soil Alabama's season. It should not soil Houston's season. It shouldn't even soil Purdue's season. I mean, it shouldn't soil any of that stuff, but people are going to remember Purdue is probably, only the second number one seed to ever lose. People are going to remember Houston, Alabama, but not for long, because they're going to remember they didn't win. Well, guess what? A lot of one seeds haven't won. So, I mean,
I think it's amazing, like what you're saying, especially in the coaching world, but even in the playing world, like how many times have you seen, a team go, let's say, 17-13 in the regular season, they win their conference tournament, talking about at a low major level, they win one game in the NCAA tournament, and next thing you know, they're flopping to some job for $2.5 million a year when you've probably had some cat that's been in that league winning pretty consistently, built a really good program, but just have never been able to win that tournament game. And he's still at that school, or you'll see players. I can remember guys like Jimmer Fredette, Jimmer Fredette goes bananas in the tournament. Next thing you know, he's a lottery pick or got drafted. And you're kind of like, I don't know if I ever had him on a draft big board. Like the tournament can be the most magical situation of all time, but it can change your life, with one win. I mean, just one. Look at the guy, Fairleigh Dickinson. I mean, he's right out of D2. He's making $40,000. He's got to be the ugliest coach in the tournament. And then instant, the dude is like going to Iona. And I mean, Iona is a good basketball school. Like there's a
very
lot.
good.
I mean, mean, Rick
Mhm.
Pitino was just there. And he won one game. And, he's gone from D2 to Fairleigh Dickinson to Iona over a 3-year period. And at the end of the day, he won one game, which, again, I was rooting for him. It was a lot of fun. He seems like an incredible guy. But that's how magical that tournament can be and how overblown sometimes maybe those wins can be. But hey, I'd take it. If somebody wants to help me win a tournament game and go get, $1 million contract,
Right.
I'm in.
And, to me, if you go look at, I forget what year it was, but Arizona was playing Duke. I think it was a Sweet 16. And Derek Williams had one of the best dunks I've ever seen for Arizona. Now, Williams was a good player, but he ended up being the number 2 pick. And Can you tell me anything about Derek Williams' NBA career? No, because there wasn't much of one at all.
Zero. Mm-hmm.
So
That's Charlotte, I believe.
yeah, I mean, that's the tournament, but that's the tournament point right there. I mean, a guy had a great, even Marvin Williams when he came off the bench for Carolina. I mean, Marvin Williams was a really, really good player, And if he had stayed, I think he'd have probably been the number 1 pick maybe the next year or so. But I mean,
Well,
we were talking about.
Since you talk about guys like Adam Morrison from Gonzaga.
Yep. Well, my Adam Morrison memory is him laying on the floor crying, and it shouldn't be because he was a great college player.
Really good.
Well,
We
fellas,
talked about. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, I'm real quick. We talked about the impact of that. We were talking about Noah Clowney with Alabama this year. Like the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament, he went bananas. And I know he's on some draft boards, but I thought if he makes a run right here and with his size and athleticism, if he goes and plays well for the next 5 games and they win the Natty, he'll be a top 10 pick just because of the run in the tournament. Where if we don't make the tournament, he's probably not a run. But man, March, man, it's awesome. The impact of the tournament is just crazy, and I'm ready to see how it finishes up this week.
Perfect. So I appreciate you guys coming on. We're gonna do one thing to finish off for both the men and the women. Okay.
Okay.
I want to know who you think is going to make it. I want to know the championship game for the men and then the women. But for the men, I want to know who's going to make the game and who's going to win. And what do you think the score is going to be?
Oof, tough.
San Diego State and UConn. San Diego State 67, UConn 62.
Ooh.
All right. Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm gonna go San Diego State and UConn as well. Even though I want to go ahead and say that's not where my heart is. But UConn's just playing such good basketball right now. I'm gonna go San Diego State and UConn. I'm gonna go a little higher than that. I'm gonna say it ends up being like 75-61.
And who's going to win?
UConn.
Okay. So I'll play devil's advocate here. I'm going to say UConn and Florida Atlantic. I'm going to say UConn's going to win 85-58.
Wow.
So we'll see how that goes.
Be in bed before
little bit. But I mean, UConn's been a second half team, so I'm really curious to see if Lightning's going to keep striking for that. Now, for the
Lightning might as
women's
well strike
Final
Dusty
Four-
May that night too. If it's going to be 85-58.
Hey,
58.
we will definitely see what happens for that. Now, for the women, which 2 teams are going to make the championship game, and what's the final score?
South Carolina over LSU 84-68.
I'm gonna go LSU and South Carolina as well, which I think the tournament really wants that. I mean, you're talking about 2 totally different psycho head coaches that would make for probably some good television in a championship game. I can't wait to see what the LSU coach is going to bust out for the Final Four, whether she'll be full out feathers or some kind of Mardi Gras outfit. But I'm going to call the upset in the championship. I'm going to call the upset in the championship, LSU over South Carolina, and I'm going to go 62-59.
And by the way, that's an afternoon game on Sunday.
Really?
Yep.
Terrible.
3:30.
The
Terrible.
championship game.
That's great.
The
You can
championship
stay up
game's at
for-
3:30 on
You
Sunday.
can stay up for that one.
Yeah, that's true.
You can make it awake. You can stay up and make it awake and not have to drink the coffee.
So
Unless
the
you want
women's
to.
basketball championship game is at what time?
3:30.
On
ABC.
Tuesday?
Yep,
Sunday.
on Sunday.
Sunday. Okay,
Because
gotcha.
the
That
national
makes
semis are Friday.
yeah.
And
Yep.
the national I think it's great. I wish, I'm a baseball fan. I wish World Series games would start before the hour in which my head hits the pillow.
Sure. Because they're gonna last till you wake up.
Correct.
sometimes.
Well, I mean, with the time between the pitch clock between, we're gonna see how that goes. So it's gonna be a long year regardless. My pick, I have South Carolina going against Virginia Tech. I do think South Carolina's gonna win, and I think it's gonna be 85-62. We'll definitely see what happens, because if I'm wrong, you know what? I'll survive. It still is gonna be some good games no matter what, and for me, I will get to become a year older while I'm watching some of the games, so I'm gonna enjoy that. So that's something that's
Oh,
gonna
good.
be
Have you wrote
fun.
it down.
And there is a story if South Carolina is in there. Obviously, they're South Carolina, but Dawn Staley, having played at Virginia, would be going against Virginia Tech. If it's South Carolina and LSU, you've got Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey. So I think the women has better story setups for the finals than the men. Definitely, by
Yeah.
far.
I agree, that's why I'm looking forward to it, and either way, I know Bob, next week you and I will definitely be doing a recap on that, and Jeremy, if you have time, you're welcome to join us next week, but either way, we appreciate you coming on and giving us your input.
Always
Just
love talking
because,
to you, Coach.
Yeah, man.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. Another time, I do want to get you on because I'd like to kind of ask you a few questions about just how recruiting is for you, like for some of your players when they're recruited into college, just so I could kind of get a little bit of an idea for that. Just so that way, I know that you've had players that have been scouted and recruited, and I see you have pictures a lot for some of your former players who are playing in college. So another time, I'd like to pick your brain about that so that we could maybe get another aspect on it for the show, if that's okay with you.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. We will definitely make sure to do that. But fellas, I hope you have a great week. We're gonna see who wins and look forward to the recap. But thank you for coming on. This has been the top 25 rundown presented by the Sportscast. Have a wonderful night, everybody.